This is by one of my pseudonyms, so this is the Universal Life Orchestra. There was a track that I did a few years back. What I'll do is I'll hook that up as a link for you guys to check out as a Spotify link, so you could have a listen for free. And so this is like an overdue follow-up. And the reason why I've decided not to make it a Danny J. Lewis track is because it feels different. You know, it's like if you listen to it, it doesn't feel that it fits that kind of name. All right. So the whole kind of concept with this is that it's an instrumental track. It's got a kind of emotional kind of feel to it. You know, I've designed it so that it can be interpreted in different ways by people. I'm trying to put a little bit of a message into it, but you need to read into that whatever you want to make from it. The title is Time. It was originally Time After Time, but I know that quite a few people have used that, and I wanted to make it a little bit different. I know it's really hard with titles these days to come out with something original, but it felt like Time kind of worked with the piece, with the music. And I'm always trying to tell stories with my music. I'm always trying to make sure that there's some kind of emotional response when you listen to it. And it might seem a little bit convoluted, long-winded, but you know, it's important for me to try to put something like that into my music. So this track, you know, I've got it laid out in Ableton here. You can see that arrangement. And what I'm going to do is just to go through some of the elements and explain what's going on. So some of it's going to cover things like mixing. Some of it's going to cover stuff like the composition, the musical side as well. And where to start? I tell you what, you know, I just explained something. I'm going to switch onto the session view, and you're going to see that there are a couple of scenes here. So scene 1 and scene 2, and some variations in terms of the musical elements. This is very common in terms of the way that I actually compose. I'll lay down some clips in the session view and just experiment, do a couple of variations. I don't tend to make complicated tracks. I don't tend to have tons of elements going at the same time. Some of you would have seen that in terms of my compositions so far that I've exposed, you know, through the channel. And this is another one that's relatively simple, you know, in terms of its musical elements. And it's not particularly organized, as you can see. There's no coherence in terms of the elements, you know, what's placed where. Generally, you can see some drums up here and then some musical elements, but then it goes back to kind of effects and other bits and pieces going on. But you know, this would have started off with a beat, a bass line, and the chord, and that's it. The rest of it is all added throughout the actual kind of structuring and arranging phase. Let me start off with the beats. Okay, let me start off with these. And you can see that something's turned off here. You know, when I'm working, sometimes I turn the elements on and then decide sometimes that I don't like them anymore. This was a solid bus compressor that was being used to gel the beats together, and I decided it was a little bit too much. And you can also see that the beats were put together in Machine. So I'm just going to open this up. I'm not sure if it's going to come up on my second monitor or not, and it has. It's quite an old track, this. So this is with the old Machine 1 software. So you know, it's looking a little bit different if you're familiar with Machine 2 now. So all of these are coming through a stereo out. I haven't routed these through individual outputs, and that was just a real kind of speed and laziness thing, really, to be honest. It would have been better to individually mix these, but I haven't. I've just put them all through the stereo out, and I've dealt with it in that way. So 3 separate kits, not all being used. Okay, so look, what I'll do is I'll show you here the very intro. I'm using some automation. The EQ8, what I'm doing is it's just the first frequency, just to basically filter the beats down. Let's have a listen. So you can see the EQ thinning the beat out, and that's going to be automated. So we've got the real heavy weight of the kick there now. So the drums are layered with other elements. My foundation beat in Machine was this. Bring it back. And in terms of the other elements, let me just show you something. We've got bongos. I'm not sure if these are coming in just yet. I might have automated these. Let's have a listen. Now they're there. And whilst we're here, let's take a look at what I've done with this. So this is a bongo loop. and I can't remember which library I used, but I found it, and I've changed it. You know, it's like if I'm going to use a loop that anybody else can have access to, I want to do something different with it, and in this case I've gated it. So let's take that off. So this is adding a slight different rhythm to it. I've used the EQ3 to roll off the bottom end, so I've turned off the low band, and everything below 216 Hz is being reduced. That's what it was before. So this is a real subtle layer that's down low in the mix. The other thing that I think is really crucial to this is the vinyl. So I've got a track which is literally vinyl noise. And I'm going to focus on that. You know, I've rolled off the bottom end on here, look. I didn't want that rumble there. You know, it's too much low frequency energy coming in. So we take this off. You can really see the impact of that clap there. That's another audio loop. So that's some claps that were basically bounced out and then flipped, so I reversed it. So sometimes I do resampling and processing. I mix and match it sometimes, so that's what's going on with that. So have a listen. And in isolation, so that's adding a real nice looseness to everything. Here's a reverse crash. So it just adds a little bit of an indicator about certain sections. Every 8 bars. Nice little kind of swish. And another audio cue is the clap coming up here. And the clap is literally an instance of drum rack. You can see that here. Running through CMX for some widening, running through ping pong delay to add some echoes. It's coming up. Right, now, you might have heard something else coming up. So we've got the tambourine. Now this is running through a flanger, glue compressor and EQ. So look, let me show you what it sounds like without. I'm going to group these together and we can bypass the whole rack. You can hear it's kind of messy and no movement on there. So with my effects, and you can see that the LFO is moving quite slowly here. I really like that. Add some variation. I love that bit where you get that kind of comb filter texture almost. So the good compressor is just kind of binding the levels together there, so smoothing it out on the volume side. And then there's this hat loop coming in. I can't remember where I got this from, but this is another one of these drum loops from a library. There's me shouting out about sample pack usage, and look at me using a sample pack loop probably. I'm such a contradiction sometimes, but you know, you'll see what I'm doing here. That's what it was originally. I'm twisting it up and I've got it as a little background texture just to fill in the gaps, so I think that's fair use. Now let me talk about the bass line. Yeah, I wanted to do something here that had that element of that sort of contemporary vibe. Yeah, maybe a touch of disclosure in there. One of those kind of more contemporary bass sounds. So ultimately what I did was I layered two instances of Massive together, but it ended up being really messy. The problem was when I had my 2 instances, I then also ran them through this lot to bind them together. The problem was that when I took all that off and just had the bass, it didn't sound right because I got so used to how it was sounding. So that's why I've got a weird arrangement here. So there's a track contained within a group. So the track has got processing. You can see that here. And also then it's processed again. So look, I tell you what, let's take a look at this. What is the bass? The bass is basically a Massive preset that I've customized. So this is a preset. Let me just make sure it's coming up. It's going to come up on the other screen. I'm going to drag it over. So here we go. So Absolute is the patch, but I've customized it. And let's have a listen. Let's have a listen. So that's with my processing on it. Let me just once again group these together. So Shift plus select set, or Command plus select for individual ones, and then right click. So let's, I'll tell you what, I didn't want to do that actually, because then I'd be turning off massive. So let me just take these two, and we're going to group these together, and off. That's the original sound. Look at the erosion. It's such a wicked effect. Look, that's adding this real nice kind of ring in the high frequencies. So let me take that off. See, there's nothing here. And then turn it on. There it is. And that frequency you can set over here. So I did 8.18K. I liked that texture. Some people may not like it, but for me that added a real kind of nice energy to that. So look, that's that. And then let's have a look at effect the whole lot. Got a lot going on here. I've got the glue compressor, then this is a sidechain compressor, so it's ducking the volume whenever the kick hits. Then I've got multi-band compression because the sound is very rich, it occupies lots of different frequencies, and I felt that some were jumping out a little bit, so that's kind of binding together everything on a frequency basis, so the lows and mids and the highs, and then through some reverb here, so that's helping. In fact, I'll tell you what, let's take these all off. You see how it's really stabby now? So the compression is adding more of a kind of length to the sound, filling the gaps in more. I preferred how that sounded, alright? So. And I needed some kind of a hook, so I did like a vocal stab. And you can see the processing here. I tell you what, this was really messy. It was like an old acapella. Let's group these together and just turn that off. Let's come back. Listen to that bottom end, that's so messy. So look, back on. And working really nicely, I think. There's a little hook. It's a bit old school, but I don't mind that. It's working for me. Just thinking, I didn't really focus on that vinyl. Did I focus? I'm losing track here. Yeah, you heard that, didn't you? Yeah. So anyway, the pad, this is a crucial element of this, and this is something that I feel brings the name in, the Universal Life Orchestra, because the previous track had a real string kind of filtered vibe on it, so this is echoing that. And this is a massive patch. I can't remember which preset I used, but once again it would be something that I tinkered with and changed a bit. So filter this voltage, that's on massive, running through this whole range of processes. So an EQ3 just to take off the low lows, sidechain compressor. No, actually this is a compressor to balance out the levels. With a pad, when it's moving around, you get some level inconsistency, so I wanted to iron out some of those. So that's just an overall volume control. Then this over here is the sidechain ducking from the kick, then the filter, then more EQ, then even more EQ. So probably against the textbook, but I like how it sounds. So you can see some notes here for the chords. And I really like the shift. So these flow in this particular way, but then you can see the second chords where the notes vary. I need to open the filter up really so you can properly hear this. So if we go to a later section, we get that real contrast coming up. Here we go. This is where I talk about an emotional response. So for me, this mood is great, but then the next section really adds to the drama. Let's come back. And I'm going to leave this, I'm going to put it on loop so it comes back. You get that emotional thing again. Yeah, this kind of like string and emotional kind of thing is like it resonates with events that are going on in your life. You know, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make music that kind of soundtracks certain things that are going on. Maybe they're not particularly positive, maybe they are positive, maybe you're stepping back and looking at life, and but anyway, look, I'm going into it a bit too much, but anyway, maybe people are just like listening to this and they don't even think about anything, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, that's what I'm feeling, that's how it's coming out. The other thing I'm doing is I'm embellishing these pads with some strings, some sustained high notes. This is probably M1. I use this high string patch a lot. So also embellishing it with some notes here coming from Massive. This is a bell sound, so look, I'll bring these back on. So the bells have got real 80s vibe. And you'll see a lot that I use the EQ and then also the mixer to cut off the beats. And this is allowing me to adjust on the arrangement, the beats, without having to get in there and do the manual outputs on the machine and, you know, configuring everything. So literally I'm taking the stereo out from machine, turning the volume right down at these points to add the contrast, but also using the EQ to filter out certain frequencies to thin the beats out. So that's how I enable myself to get some variations over the whole track, using just a stereo out on machine instead of doing separate outs, right? To show you the crash, this sort of stuff I play in on the fly, and I always try to make sure that I don't just loop it everywhere. I'll try to find sections where I'll play it deliberately for that moment in the track. White noise sweep, just adding a little bit of drama, just breaking everything down onto this build up here. So nothing new, it's just the arrangement is really stripped down so you haven't heard it in this particular way before, and then the beats being filtered. The chords with that more emotional note voicing on there, and then flipping back onto the first chords here. A little bit of a break, and then back in again with the high string adding the tension. Completely the same note as you can see here. Only towards the end of the phrase does it kind of get embellished. And it's just to add some extra impact. So just towards the end, just stripping it down, eventually ending up in just beats for the DJs. So anyway, that's it. I'm going to stick that out this week. I'm going to do a little experiment again on Bandcamp. So keeping it independent, keeping it underground, and eventually then it will go to all the stores and do the streams on Spotify, etc. But I'm looking for a little limited window here again, where I'm going to make it available on Bandcamp for those that want it, and I'm going to do some analysis and present my findings as well, you know. So that's the track Universal Live Orchestra, Ableton Live 9, and that's called Time.